I was basically messaged on LinkedIn by a guy who I didn't know. We met with him like for, I don't know, an hour maybe or two. I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. We paid ourselves like a very small salary. What you have to expect when you start your own company is basically hard work and struggle. Right now, I think we're around 150 people. We are not more than just like apes without hair. Our brain hasn't changed. It's still the same. Everything that we created, we also created because we are cruel animals. The mathematics is a virtual reality that we created for ourselves to describe certain things.
Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today I have an interview with quite an interesting guest. Igor has led a path from being technical founder to having part of his own company, and he is developing software for banking in Germany and around the world. And we're going to talk about founder path and how the industry works. Please welcome Igor.
Hi everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me for this interview. Very happy and excited to be here. So that's pretty cool. I hope it will be helpful for everyone. We'll see.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And my first question would be, can you please introduce yourself and tell about what you're doing right now? What is your area of professional interest? And then I will ask you some questions. How did you came to this point?
So currently I'm the co-founder of mBank. mBank is a company that provides digital banking solutions all around the world. Mainly we are operating on the US market as of today, but we also have a couple of clients in Europe, and we're trying to get hold of the clients in the Asian market, mainly or primarily in Hong Kong and Singapore. That's about it. The company is around 7 years old. I was with the company from the very beginning.
So you came in a project as being a hired developer and then get your shares, or you be from the very beginning as a co-founder?
Yeah, I was the co-founder from the very beginning. Exactly. I was basically the employee number 2, co-founder number 2.
Co-founder number 2. So tell me about the moment when you gathered with your future co-founders and decided to start this business. What was the idea and how did you deal about your positions before you start? Because maybe you know it's quite a hard story when founders haven't negotiated on the very beginning, and that might lead to some problems. So how it was in your case?
It's a pretty interesting story, to be absolutely honest with you. So back then I was working for a neobank in Munich. There was a neobank called Fidor Bank, and I was responsible for the worldwide first open banking API back then. So we built the open banking API and also provided the app store for the software developers to basically develop like different applications for the banking customers. So, but I decided to leave the company, to leave Fidor, and just like one random guy, almost at my last day at work, I was basically messaged on LinkedIn by a guy who I didn't know, and he was basically telling me, I'm in Munich, like for the next 2 hours. I'm trying to build like a digital banking solution. Do you want to meet for a coffee? I just met with him somewhere in Munich. I don't remember where it was exactly. So we met with him like for, I don't know, an hour maybe or two. Talked about like the potential collaboration and whether I want to become like one of the co-founders of the company. And since I was leaving the Fidor Bank anyways, I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. So I have like a lot of ideas. Let's just like meet, I don't know, in 2 weeks. Maybe you will be back in Europe, because he's originally from UK, but he lives and he was living back then in the USA. He was basically traveling throughout the Europe and was trying to find the co-founders for digital bank. So he found me in Munich. He found another guy in our current CTO. He found him in Stuttgart. He was back then, I think, the CTO of Deutsche Bank, or like one of the major guys at Deutsche Bank. And I think that was it in Europe at least. So yeah, I left Fidor Bank and I joined mBank as a co-founder in a breeze.
Yeah, I heard a lot of stories about establishing company, but like this for the first time. Tell me, have you posted something on LinkedIn like, I'm going to leave my current job, which is quite usually what people not do, and I'm looking for opportunities for, or it was completely coincidental?
It was completely coincidental. So it came
on your very last day. You serious?
Yeah, it came out of nowhere, and we were talking about it like later on. when we already had the company, that basically all the co-founders that came together, basically almost like in 1 week, they were all came together on like one trip of our CEO. So he built the company together with us, like basically in 1 week. And he was just like messaging like different guys that he found interesting back then, or the ones you. I think you have to understand that like 7 years ago, it was 7 years ago, there was like almost no fintech. It all just started. There wasn't like no Revolut or Robinhood or anything like that, and that's why the whole fintech community was pretty small. So, and since I was present at different events that was held by Feeder Bank in London, in Moscow, I guess you could find the people like me very easily. At least back then. Now it's totally different.
And if you came back to that time, I think you had a well-paid job, and you'll find a guy who had, I suppose, a vision same as you, and you start to exchange ideas. My first question would be, did you decide to have like next few years without salary on, or he had already investments, or you had your own investments to put in this company? How it works money-wise, and how hard for many developers to be ready for that giant leap to go from the corporate job to being in a startup and being co-founders. How it was in your case?
In my case, at least in our case, it was relatively simple. So we had back then a small investment from the very beginning, like an angel investment. So we had some money that we could live on, but it was like very little. We didn't have like a lot of salary. We just basically have the money to go by from month to month. But in general, I think if you want to start a company, it depends on where in life you are currently in the moment. Like when you have a family, it's a totally different story when you are just a student, for example, right? So a lot of money, you have somewhere to live. You can just like explore different opportunities without really thinking about like how do I get by like the next month. So it wasn't like that in my case because I already had a family. So I had some money in my bank account, basically. We paid ourselves like a very small salary first 2 years almost. So we haven't spent anything. We had like a very small office in Munich. Even not for the first like 3 or 4 months, I think we were working from home. Then we rented like the office because we had investors coming in, and we had to have like some kind of like, I don't know, representation of mBank in Europe. Yeah, we had some clients coming in. That's why we basically needed one. What can I say? It's like we even struggled for the next couple of years when you don't have like a clients yet and you're basically running out of money. You're either looking for an investment for a new round, or you're trying to get the customers who will pay. And even if you will get one, not many customers are ready to pay like upfront fees. Although you need as a digital banking startup because you're basically providing the whole infrastructure, and infrastructure costs a lot of money.
And how many people you have now?
Right now, I think we're around 150 people scattered all.
Well, you are quite huge, and you came quite a long way. Many future founders or many people come to me and ask, is it the right moment to leave a corporate job and go for a startup? And I know that many of those are deluded by the belief in the startups that you just get around, you just get money, you just spend on the posh office and on the conference with the huge hotels, and then you get your shares sold and your exit on an IPO. Does it look like this for you?
For us, in our case, it never looked like that. I bet in at least 90% of the cases, it looks totally different. That's at least my understanding of the market, of the startup market. Because basically, the funds or the investors, they don't provide any money for like ideas, for example. They provide money either for the products that they will see will grow, preferably exponentially, because otherwise it's not worth investing, or they will invest money in a certain person, like in the reputation. Like, for example, if you're a serial entrepreneur, then you will probably you have more chances to get an investment from an investor. Saying all that, what you have to expect when you start your own company is basically hard work and struggle. What you have to do, at least, is to build an MVP, the one that's the one that has customers, the one that's used out there. Because if you just have an idea and you will try to sell it, nobody will buy it. So the idea is like everywhere, they're worth nothing. The hardest thing about getting an idea to the market is basically the execution. People pay for the execution. People pay for the product that will grow. Exactly. That's at least my experience. I think the problem is on the market is people see the big corporations that were startups like 20 years ago, and they think basically every startup is like that. They look like at Google, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and they think that's basically I will found a startup, I will do something, I don't know what, and I will become like the next Netflix. Unfortunately, not how it works. So there's like years and years of struggle and hard work until you will reach a certain point where you can at least be sure that you are on a stable path.
So, what would be your advice for those who are watching you and in a situation where they're hesitating? I don't like my job. I want to do one, but I'm afraid of going into startup because I don't have enough money. How to make a decision in this way? What would be your vision on that?
Oh, it depends. So I don't think that startup life and entrepreneurship as a whole is for everyone. Everyone likes it. If an idea basically bugs you all the time and you cannot just leave it alone, then maybe you should try to start. But what I would do, I wouldn't just like stop working completely, getting like no finances, etc., the stable income. I would just try to do at least part of it on the side. Because some people they think they would like to do certain things, but then they was when they start doing it like 24/7, they just stop liking it. That's what I would do. I would try to do something on the side and see if it works out for me, actually, if I really like it. Because sometimes you have this idea and you don't see the path to your vision. You only see the vision. And when you start going to this path to achieve your vision, you may be understanding that it's not for you.
You mean like better start and try not putting everything in on the table on a desk, having your own job, and try and realize that maybe that what you visualize at the path is something different in reality, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good thing. And many people came to me and also asking, hey, Valeria, I have a brilliant idea. And for example, I'm a technician guy and I need someone on the marketing side, but I don't have an investments. And how can I attract co-founders for working for me for 2 years with no salary?
Shares. That's a very simple answer. So if you're like the sole founder, for example, the problem is with someone who starts the first time to build their own company. Many people don't even realize how they can structure their business. That's the other thing. So you can potentially find like one or two other co-founders who will do their work for you to become successful, for you together as a company, and you can provide them with shares. For example, let's say, there was this 3H tale. You need like three roles in a startup to become successful. It's like you need a hacker, you need a hustler, and you need a DBA. Like hacker is an IT guy, hustler is the guy who gets the money, who gets the funding, and hippie is usually like the product guy, for example. So that's more or less the ideal team, startup team that can do certain things, for example. So you can get the people for shares, you can get interns. There's a lot of people who would like to learn something. So if you need help, for example, with programming, you can find someone, an intern from the university, and they will basically work almost for free just for the knowledge. And then if you will like working with them and you will get like the first round or angel investment, you can just hire them.
Yeah, and I would agree with you regarding the establishing company and leaving the job. My suggestion is always don't quit your job unless you're really burning by your idea. If you cannot not proceed with it. And regarding the co-founders, if you cannot find co-founders, how are you going to run a billion business if you're not into the people? It's another thing. It's hard truth. I know that there's in the market there's idea developed by the Big Bang Theory and others, TV series that you can be just nerds and in a successful business, but I haven't seen them. You need to have some hustler, with not only hackers.
Yeah. That's the sad truth. Yeah, and that's the reality. Basically, it doesn't really matter how cool your product is. If nobody knows about it, nobody will basically buy it. So you need a guy who will sell it. Sales is a big part of the product development as a whole, of basically making a company successful.
Yeah. If you're just Nikolai without Pavel, you cannot make a product.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about Pavel Durov, Igor, coincidentally from the same city, I believe, that Pavel was, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. St. Petersburg. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there was a strong mathematical school in your city?
There are some strong mathematical schools in St. Petersburg, yeah, sure. And the university is quite strong. So the guys from the math department from the St. Petersburg State University, they're like basically winning like everywhere, all around the world. And I was attending not the school, not the mathematical school, but the class. So
Was you a nerd?
I don't know if we had nerds back then, you know, it was still like the Soviet Union. I don't know if you can call anyone a nerd like in Soviet Russia. We didn't have like almost any access to like computers. There was like no internet. We had like the ZX Spectrum, you know, like the very limited computers that were mainly used for playing games. So we were trying to program. This is the father of my best friend back in St. Petersburg. He was a programmer. And I remember he was bringing like the one of the first Apple, I don't know if you can call it a MacBook. It was more looking like a suitcase, like a smaller one. Yeah, and we were trying to like do some run some programs on it and also like playing games, but it was something out of this world because nothing like that existed like that.
Was this one of the first Apple laptops, or was it IBM?
I think it was an Apple one back then, but it wasn't the one that you're imagining. It was like even prior to all the MacBooks. It wasn't like a clamshell. It was something even prior to that. It wasn't an Apple II, but something like in the direction of, I don't know how it's called, to be absolutely honest with you, something like an Apple III or something like that.
Okay, we'll put a picture of it.
Yeah, I'll try to find it. I'll try to find it to send it to you. But it was looking very weird.
I think I saw it in some documentary about Apple, and also on the Science Museum. I believe in London, there was a huge section of computers from mainframes to the modern things, and I do remember Apple. My first computer was in 2000, and it was Pentium 3. And have you participated in some Olympics mathematics competitions?
Yeah, I did a couple of times during my school time. Mathematics and history. These were my main topics. Don't ask me why.
Are you still in a history as well? Is it like continuous in your life?
Yeah, sure. History, philosophy, psychology. These topics are still interest me. Yeah.
Maybe you can share the last YouTube videos or books that you've been watching or reading on those topics.
On history and psychology, I don't remember what I have watched on psychology. I'm doing currently like a psychology course on, I don't remember if it's Udemy or some other provider. That's what I do. But I'm somewhere like in the middle about like psychology of child development, etc., etc.
Oh, so you're taking a course about child development.
About psychology in total, but it goes like from the very beginning. Psychology of child development, psychology of brain development, and which parts of the brain are responsible for what, etc., etc. And basically like in the not in the very beginning, but somewhere like in the first third of the course.
And why you decided to take part in this course? What drives your curiosity?
Because it interested me how the like human psychology works. You know, to understand better myself and everyone else as a human being, to see how we actually develop, how we learn. Yeah, just to get better understanding of how people's brains work, basically. Because there are some things you cannot grasp really with just let's say with just physics and mathematics. So you have to get a bit deeper into psychology and philosophy to understand why we are as we are. That's basically why.
I recently watched a podcast of Lex Friedman and mathematician and scientist. I believe his family was Bach. He's from Germany, and I would say he's quite a genius, and he also tried to conceive the nature of the consciousness. And being as mathematical approach, he deep dives in the reality of our behavior, and he introduced works of Wittgenstein. He was a philosopher of the mid-20th century who tried to merge logic and philosophy to understand how our brain works and how our reality works. And I do believe that philosophy and mathematics is two most beautiful science in the world. And if you go to university, maybe in the future, you don't have to choose one of them. There might be some courses where you can split.
You don't like the physics?
Oh, I would love to love physics, but I barely understand something in physics. Unfortunately, I do love to read. I dedicated last 6 months to the understanding of the quantum physics. I did some good steps, but regarding the mechanics and the rest of the physics, I'm too bad.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. I don't think you can describe how the human brain works solely mathematically. I don't think it will work. There are too many exceptions. And from my understanding, human beings are really like irrational beings in that regard. They're like too many exceptions to the rules, as if like the exception becomes the rule actually.
Yeah. And in that case, one of my favorite author is Sapolsky. He is, I believe, professor in Stanford, and he is a neuroscientist. And he wrote such a thick book about monkeys, about his expedition in Kenya for, I believe, summer seasons for 10 years. And he's been observing pavilions. Oh my God, I've been reading this book and understand we're so much like monkeys. We such the tribe, we community. They have a jealousy. They get in love. They get angry. Everything that we have, we're not far away from them. And I think that neuroscience and biology can give us the answers, as you mentioned, that math cannot provide, because we are much more irrational.
Oh yeah, I don't remember. There's a book which is called like Naked Ape. I don't remember the name of the author. But if you read it, basically, you will see that we are not more than just like apes without hair, basically. Not a lot has changed. So we're driven by the same desires, more or less. We created like a social construct around us. That's what makes us basically human. But besides that, we are still the same people we were like, I don't know, thousands of years ago.
You mentioned that you've been interested in Nietzsche, and he was famous for declaring that God is dead. What he meant is that if I talk about from the point of view from the Europe, on the Christian culture, which was the base for the last 2000th century. And how do you think, what is now, if not the God, the real glue of our society, and what is above us as monkeys? Is it exist or not? What replaced the God?
Let's say, so first of all, if the God is something we basically created ourselves, right, in our imagination, then we can assume nothing, it has never existed, right? And if we look around us as humans, we see that everything around us is created also by us, not by God.
By 5% of us, I would suppose.
Okay, but I mean by us as human beings. Even the things like mathematics, for example, it's like it doesn't exist. It's like the mathematics is a virtual reality that we created for ourselves to describe certain things, right? So nature doesn't know anything about mathematics. Like physics, we don't even know if the laws that we apply right now in physics are actually true. So they keep changing. Like whenever we know something, whenever we know more about the world, we keep changing the laws of physics. So there are actually no laws in that regard. So we don't know if the mathematics that we use are actually correct, just like our representation of the things around us. That's why I think the philosophy is also very important, because it tries to answer very fundamental questions, like who we are, what are we doing here, what's the goal of all of it. Like, for example, mathematics can only exist if you disregard all the things we don't know answers for. Otherwise, it's basically like I don't know if I want to say this word, it's like a castrated science. So we removed some of the things we don't know answers for, and then we use it as it is. So we basically, it's the thing that exists in a vacuum, so to speak. I don't know if there is a God. I don't think there is, to be honest with you. I don't even know if everything that surrounds us is actually real.
Oh, that's a good question.
Because it's all part of our imagination. I was also listening to one of the podcast with Lex Friedman and one of the physicists. And if you think about it, like the things we see, they don't really look like we interpret them, right? So it's only our view at the world, which is totally different to the view that, I don't know, like one animal has, for example. It doesn't mean that it's true, just our interpretation.
Is it hard to conceive that our perception of the world is just a delusion aiming for one goal, survival of our genes?
Don't know. I think no, I see it a bit different. So, for example, if we see something, we just interpret how the things looks in our worldview, right? Now, worldview is based on, like, say, history, philosophy, etc. But I don't think we use it to sustain as a species. What we use to sustain as a species are the hormones, basically. That's what's given to us by whomever, so that we won't extinct. It's a very powerful mechanism. That's why partially I think you cannot really describe how the human brain works purely with mathematics, because there are like also hormones involved. There's like, if you have to use the chemistry as well. So there's like a chemistry, there is physics, there's mathematics, etc., etc. So you cannot just like take, for example, hormones out of the equation if you want to describe how human brain works.
Your love is just oxytocin and dopamine. Your anger is just cortisol. And we perceive different proportion of the hormones of feelings. And that's pretty sad, isn't it?
I don't think it's sad, but you have to be aware of that. But plus, it would be too easy if it was just for the hormones, because we use our experience, our life experience, and we basically bend our own world, and we can sometimes produce hormones by ourselves by just imagining certain things, right? You don't even know, like, if the love exists if you just imagine it to be existent. That's the thing. The brain constantly tricks us, right?
Yeah, I read somewhere that romantic idea of the love was created by German writers in the 17th century who started to write love poems. It just wasn't in the mind. The same as idea of nation was a creation of the late 19th or 18th century. Before that, people get associated with a religion first, and not the idea of nation.
Yeah, but if you think about it, like, we were just tribes, right? We weren't a nation in that regard. But funny thing, you can see it right now as well. Like, for example, if I speak with my Russian friends, they always say the things like European, who's European? Like, for example, there is no such thing as a European, because the guy who lives like in Naples, for example, even inside of Italy, if we talk about Italy, is totally different from a guy who lives like somewhere in the North Italy, somewhere in, like, I don't know, in Genoa, for example. Like, two different people. They are not even the same nation. And if you ask them, the one says, I'm Neapolitan, he doesn't say I'm Italian, and the other one says, like, I don't know, I'm from Genoa, or I'm from Verona. It's the same for Germany. There's no such thing as the European in Europe, at least in my view. Like, if you take a look at Germany, they're like Bavarians and, I don't know, Saxonians, and even inside of Bavaria, there are the guys who live like somewhere around Nuremberg. They don't see themselves as Bavarian, even not German and not Bavarian. They're like Franconians, etc., etc. So yeah, the nations in that regard, nations do not really exist. But what does exist, I think, is a similar cultural context. That's what I think exists.
Can you elaborate that?
There's such thing as a European culture, for example, like similar architecture, similar drawings, similar music, etc., etc. That's really part of the European culture. So I think many Europeans can associate with, like, Mozart, for example, or Bach. They don't say, like, that's our, maybe Germans will say that's our national treasure, but that's the part of European culture. Like literature, for example, the romantic literature you were talking about like just minutes ago. That's also part of the European culture. That's basically like the creation of European culture, right? Maybe Christianity partially, but I'm not really into the religion. So the religion may be also considered as part of the culture, part of the European culture. At least it's very heavily influenced by Christianity. So you cannot really imagine. You cannot really imagine Europe without Christianity. It just doesn't work. It will be something totally different, a totally different construct.
I would say that I could imagine Europe without Christianity in like 100 years. I think in my projection, what I see, the current tendency, uh, number of Christians would shrink, just according to the current trends.
Yeah, but then it won't be Europe as we understand it right now anymore. It will be something on the European continent, so to speak, but it will be something completely different, I think.
You would agree that current majority of populations is still ancestors of Ellin's culture based on the ancient Greek, and then developed Rome, and Rome conquered half of the Europe and developed its culture, law, democracy, even if this democracy was with 90% of the slaves, but they had some good things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not everywhere in Europe. Are we talking like right now about Europe or the whole world?
Europe.
Kinda, not entirely, I think. Like, for example, the Nordic countries are quite different to the rest of Europe, I think, because they weren't really, or at least not to that extent, the part of the like big Roman Empire, you know? That's why, although they were assimilated, I mean, the partially conquered parts of the Roman Empire and they assimilated with this culture, but I think they're still a bit different than maybe some other parts of Europe.
You, as a European, work towards the classical stream of tech products being sold from United States to Europe. You work country-wise. So tell me how the culture difference affected on your business. Are you understanding the customers there? Any funny stories that you have over there?
I don't know if I have any funny stories, but for sure, like cultural differences between different countries, between different continents, but sometimes not as you would expect them. I worked with people from many different cultures, also from like different parts of Europe. And there were like the stereotypes, for example, that I don't know, the Germans are very hardworking and Italians are very like lazy. But I very often saw like the contrary to that. So I was working, for example, a lot with like Italians, and they were like really hardworking, and I was working with Germans that were like not really hardworking, but rather lazy, for example. So to me, the stereotypes rarely worked out, so to speak. So, but for example, if we started to work on the Asian market, we had and still have developers in Asia. This is what struck me a bit. They are not very direct, not as direct as some Europeans. They are very agreeable and they cannot say no, really. It brings like some problems with it. So as a European, as a, let's say North European, although we just talked about it, there is like no such thing as European, but I mean in cultural sense, not geographical. When you ask for something, you expect that the person will say either I cannot do it, or I don't know, I won't finish it on time, etc., etc. In Asia is like a bit different. They will always say yes. They will always say they will finish everything on time, and it doesn't matter how big of a task it is. But then you will just like basically find out in a week that 20% has been done. But they just like cannot say no, for example.
Yeah, I've been living in Asia, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Indonesia, and I was really curious why it happened. So my investigation led me that for Asian people, there is so many reasons. First, if you're a boss or if your father, like boss is the same as a father, you cannot say no. You have to obey. You have to be part of the team or the family. And the second thing, worst thing that might happen, especially in Japan, is that you will lose your face, and that is the dramatic might lead to dramatic consequences. So it's like a part of society agreement as not playing in the game when put some questions when someone might lose the face. And if something like that happens, I believe in Spain people have the beautiful word for it, no pasada, so means like no, nothing special about it. So they just have like mutual agreement in the society of not talking about no. And no means like losing the face. I believe for Germans it's very hard to understand why no is losing the face. But for Asian culture, rejection is something like still on the surface of the taboo.
Yeah, but I think it only works inside of its own culture. It doesn't work like cultural. For example, if I work with someone from Asia, let's say if I work with like a Japanese guy, I ask him to do something, he says yes, and he doesn't do it, right? In his own culture, he didn't lose his face because he said yes, he tried to, maybe he didn't, I don't know, he didn't achieve everything. Yeah, but in my case, like you said yes to me and you didn't do like as expected, basically. So it doesn't mean that he lost face, but the thing is, he didn't finish his task. So to me, it didn't work out. For him, it did. Kind of worked for him, isolated in his own world, but basically didn't. If you work like interculturally, it doesn't work anymore.
So it didn't work in your world, but in his world is working. So how we are still patchwork of different culture around this small globe and becoming more and more connected and still experience different approaches on work and communication and on life, and how we can work with each other. Should we find some standard like international language, international culture, work culture, or we will stay, if we come to Italy, we will go to the dinner for a couple of hours with wine, on the business trip. If we go to Japan, we will stay until 10 p.m. until the boss left. And if we go to the Germany, we have to say no, even if we are Asians. How we can fix it? And should it be fixed on your point?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the better question. I don't think it should. It's like it will be totally boring to live in the world where everyone is the same. Just imagine, like you will get, like whenever you do something, you will get what you expect because everyone plays by the same rules. It's like I don't think the worst society ever, I guess. In the broader sense, it doesn't even work in one culture. So sometimes we expect something from people and we don't get it, and we don't even know the reason, right? Sometimes even if we talk about it, then we know the reason why something didn't happen as to our liking. So I wouldn't like to live in the society where everyone is the same. Then it's like totally boring. But I don't think it will happen anytime soon. Only maybe with Neuralink, where everyone has the same chip inside their brain, then you can just control people and they will all do like the same thing, or the one that's expected from them.
Good that you came to this point. I was going to ask your opinion as you work in the tech industry and recent neural network developings. I think we're more or less on the same point that it's not still artificial intelligence. Nevertheless, how do you perceive our probability of arising a real AGI within the next 10 years? And if yes, what would happen on your point of view?
I don't think it will happen in the next 10 years, but I have a feeling that much worse things will happen like in the next 10 years than like Gen AI, for example. Somehow I have a feeling that what we perceive right now as artificial intelligence will just become a commodity. It won't be like that dangerous. Maybe only if it's used somewhere by like the big military complexes, then maybe that will be the case. But what saddens me a bit is that we will become even more stupid than we are as humanity. Yeah, we'll just become more helpless, basically. This will be basically like our progress. The problem is right now, like in the last, I think, how many years was like 150 years or roundabout, we lost like, I don't know, like almost 1/5 of our brain weight. We already became pretty stupid and it will just continue. We have all this help from like all the tech we can imagine, yeah, but we just, I don't know, just basically stop thinking because everyone is given to us. People do not even realize like how certain things work, even like the very simple ones. I know there is this thought experiment. Can we, for example, if we will get rid of everything that we achieved so far, how much time it will take us to build, like, for example, a mobile phone again from scratch? And the thing is, like, we don't even know. We work on such a big history of development of our species that we don't have even people who would be able right now to repeat like this whole progress because the whole knowledge is spread through like the whole humanity.
I often do ask myself question if almost everyone extinct and I will be one from the very limited number of people who survived, and they said, hey, you have a math degree, please write the theorems that you remember, or can you please create even the simplest electricity, can you create even the, and I do realize that I do very stupid. I cannot make anything without some digital help.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the case. Yeah, exactly. And then coming back to the AI, I think the AI will become a commodity in a couple of years. I think it will happen even faster than we think. So it will be just basically everywhere. People will just use it without even understanding how it works or what happens like underneath the bonnet. Yeah, but there will be like a very big leap whenever the convergence of the different tech industries will happen. So when we'll have like AI plus biotech, we will just have people who will like basically operate as they were like ChatGPT.
And how do you perceive the modern technologies like TikTok and other social media? I do remember that some forecasts from the mid of the last century of the scientists, they will have a network that will connect all the libraries. People will have access to all knowledge. Everyone will be in a science. They will create the flying cars and be every house in the world will be on the solar energy, etc. And what we did, we're just having Instagram and that's it. And we're ranking who getting tried to earn some attention from the tribe and earn some points for taking more dopamine. So do you perceive it as a dangerous, especially for the new generation when who face with situation when their brain develops right into this hook of the apps?
Yeah, yes, I perceive it as a danger. I don't know how to basically effectively combat it. I have no idea because just prohibiting it probably won't work because someone will still use it. And unfortunately, we cannot even make any prospects or foresee what will happen with the people who are basically have this technology from the very early age. Like, I don't know what will happen. We'll probably, my assumption, how we always do it or how we often do it, we will try to mitigate it after it happened already. We're not trying to fix the root cause usually. We're just dealing with the consequences and trying basically to fix it somehow after it already happened.
And the root cause is always the same, is greed. Okay, we can call it lifetime value of the customer, of the time per user in an app, but all those metrics are just symbols of greed that we're thinking about money more than about the future consequences.
But that's in our nature, unfortunately. I don't mean the greed, but the strive to the power isn't justice, just part of the human nature. It won't go anywhere. It will stay with us forever.
Coming back to 10 minutes ago for our conversation, one of the most dramatic eye-opening moment for me was in the book of the Sapolsky, and he described how the tribe of the chimpanzee, there was young males who've been patrolling the surface of the tribe territory, and then met some guys who accidentally or not went through this border. So there's almost nothing left from those guys from another tribe. They just literally cut them in pieces. So there was no reason for such cruelty, and they usually do not eat people or monkeys from the same tribe or even different tribe. But aggression and anger happens. Don't you think that we as a humanity are balancing between developing of our technology and weapons and our humanity and our ability to love, to understand and to mitigate? Do you feel like this weight are in a very, very fragile balance right now?
I think it's always been like this. Nothing has changed.
I wouldn't agree on this point.
Okay. I think we're always balancing between these two things. That's why we created basically like a mythology about like good and evil. But we're talking about our inner balance, about good and evil. And that's why we basically created like or invented Christianity. Because before Christianity it was okay like to kill people. It was a daily business. That's what you do. You need to get something, you kill people, you get it. That's the thing. But it wasn't sustainable.
Even with the Christianity, we have some problems. I've been reading some literature about Christianity history over the last few months, and even start with the acquisition of new countries. Killing an idea of making someone Christian is questionable.
But I think we can look at the past and judge it by today's standard. Just think it doesn't work.
Yeah, I believe there is a modern philosopher, Steven Pinker, who says we're getting better. I mean, like our morality much, much better compared to medieval age or for last like 2,000-3,000 years ago, we're really getting better, expanding idea of importance of human life. Although come back to 2 minutes ago when you said that we've always been like that balancing. Yes and no. Yes, we were always being balancing between these two things. Nevertheless, any king before, they haven't had such dangerous weapons like right now. Like what could create any crazy king like 200 years ago? Like they could kill 2, 3, 4,000 people. That's maximum. And now we have the weapons that would lead to come to the bad hands, and they could easily extinct the half of the planet. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's true. But back then we didn't have like 8 billion people living on Earth. 3,000 people were quite a lot.
Arguable.
I mean, I was talking about the human nature, not about the technology. Yeah, technology gives us the opportunity right now to kill way more people than like 500 years ago, but it's just the technology. We operate this technology still. And I was talking about like us as human beings. In this regard, I don't think we changed a lot. I was just imagining what would happen if we would like remove all the social constructs that we built like in the last, I don't know, 1,000 years. Just like remove all the laws, remove like police, remove the state. I think we would go back to our factory settings.
And our factory setting is monkey settings. And I believe that's why I made TV series dedicated to that story, like those, how it's called, Hungry Games, Calamar Games, or the Spanish movie in a jail with the food moving from the top to the very down. Terrible movie, actually. So any situations would happen to catastrophe and when people on the small island. So this is the example of our factory settings, isn't?
Yes. I don't think we have changed, to be absolutely honest. Because and I understand why. I understand why we haven't changed yet. Because our brain development, we were basically tribes killing other tribes for like hundred thousands of years. And then only in the last, let's say, 2, 3, 400 years, we created like this whole social construct. Our brain hasn't changed. It's still the same because when it was developed, we were like killing other human beings. We were trying to get to the power. We were trying to survive basically as a species. So we're basically operating on the same brain. Nothing has changed.
Yuval Noah Harari mentioned in his book that we are 100,000 years as a species, and as you mentioned, less than 1,000 years of which we have our culture. Nevertheless, there are some local cultures, like in South America, or Zoroastrian cultures, or some others who are, I believe, quite developed, but it's not something that's usual. And quite often, there are peaceful tribes being conquered by more aggressive tribes. And how do you perceive it if you agree with this point? How do you think about it? Are you like just agree with it, or you're deep inside sorry that our world operates like this?
That's just the reality, or at least the perceived reality. We have to live with it. I mean, we cannot change it. The other things that you can imagine, if you don't like it, what you could do is really like put like a chip in everyone's brain and just control people. And that would be, in that case, the ideal society. I don't know, what could this society create, for example? Because you cannot dismiss the fact that everything that we created, we also created because we are cruel animals, partially, because we have these desires. Just imagine the male didn't have testosterone.
We would die without food, actually. Just
Exactly. The female like wouldn't be like caring for other people. Everyone would be like just normal and plain and like without any desires, without anything. That would be the ideal society, but a very boring one.
And my last question is about your industry. Can you please share your vision of what happens in the banking industry? Why do you perceive it works like that? And where do you think the next big thing will happen in the banking industry?
I don't know if it will be the next big thing. At least some predictions for the future. First of all, I think we, as like part of the society, will get more and more controlled by the state by using the technology, for sure. So we still don't have like good use cases for the blockchain industry, for example, and that's like a very good one if you want to control society. So if you will introduce like CBDC, for example, central bank digital currency. You will get rid of all the cash, for example, put all the data about a certain person like on a blockchain, use it together with a smart contract and the digital currency. You basically can control everyone's financial status as a government. Like that's, let's say, best scenario. I don't know if it will happen, but more control will be there for sure.
So you believe that idea of the digital currency that can be controlled by United States government or Central Bank of America, you believe is a realistic scenario? In which time range and how it will be rely on the customers?
I think it will happen faster than we think. I cannot give you any predictions. I think in the next 10 years we won't have any cash anymore. Not everyone will, for sure.
And not even fiat money, you mean like it will also digital centralized by DAO or something like this?
Yeah, it will be digital and centralized, but it will be like digital euro, it will be like digital dollar, digital some other currency, for example. For the normal guy out there, for the regular Joe, nothing will change. People won't even notice that something has changed. Like, for example, right now you just go around doing groceries, running errands, and you pay with Google Pay or Apple Pay everywhere. Like 90% of the time you don't even see the money. You have a number on your bank account, but that's basically it. The money doesn't, if we think about it, it's all we're already playing in this virtual world. The money doesn't exist. It's not even backed by anything. Just a number on your bank account. You cannot go to a bank and say, give me all my money. They will say, no, you can only withdraw 1,000 euros per month, for example, or per week. We already are not really in possession of our own money. So when it won't change, it will be the same. It will be the same number on your bank account, something that doesn't exist, but something that can be even easier seized away from you if needed. And for example, if you try to evade taxes right now, it won't be possible in the future because everything will be digital. Government will get the taxes from you automatically, basically. This is what will happen, I think, pretty soon. That's on the sad note. On the more happier note, I think we will see the convergence of different technologies into one big hub of technologies. For example, right now you have blockchain, you have AI, you have IoT, you have embedded payments, the fintech and banking. Since we have the IoT, for example, in the future, or we already kind of almost have it, every IoT device will be able to pay for itself, for example. So you will drive your Tesla to the charging point and the car will basically pay for itself for the electricity or for fuel. It will pay for its, I don't know, technical inspection, for example, right? It will maybe, I don't know, if you will drive past the restaurant that you liked somewhere on the maps, it will just tell you stop here and get some food, etc., etc. I think it will all become interconnected, but definitely not everywhere. How did this saying go? Future is already here, it's not evenly distributed, something like that. Someone drives a Tesla and someone else drives an old Mercedes-Benz from 1970.
In best case, in worst case, that would be a horse. You are from Bavaria, you think that the worst case is old Mercedes?
Yeah, it was just an example. Okay, not a very accurate one, I agree. Yeah, and that's how it basically will develop, I think. Convergence of technologies, different ones, plus digitization or tokenization of everything. You won't have a lot of paperwork, I guess. Everything will be somehow put on the blockchain. You will get a credit report and all your savings, all your possessions, etc., etc. That's what will happen, I think, with the fintech and banking in the near future. What will happen with it afterwards, don't really know. We'll see.
Yeah, and I just hope that with all this crazy technology that we're developing, we will still find the time to develop our culture and our best quality to give our planet to the next generation as we received it from our parents.
Let's see what will happen. Not everything is in our hands, unfortunately.
Thank you for today's conversation. It was a pleasure to host you, and I enjoyed our discussion. And I hope you will come once again to our show.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thank you very much as well. I hope it will be helpful for anyone, for someone. and I will be glad to come back and talk about like something else, maybe not only tech, but we weren't talking about tech only, so
Yeah,
it was a very interesting discussion.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.